Now, can you see that countdown?
No, I don't see that one.
Okay, we should be now live. It says we're
Okay.
live now.
Yeah, I see a blinking live. So,
Okay.
all right.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another live stream on the Bow Wow Bill page. I have Ariel Peldunas joining us. How are you doing, Ariel?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good. I had a little mishap when I was setting up the show. I went and I was emptying my compost. We had one on a bowl on the counter that was full, and I emptied it into the bucket down below. And I thought it was empty, and I pull out the bowl, and like all the compost that was there just like all over the floor. So I had to clean that up. But luckily, I work with dogs, and I have a pretty good stomach for cleaning up.
They were happy to help.
Well, no, they weren't helping. Like
Oh.
it was nasty. I didn't want them helping. Then there was a ton of ground coffee grounds and stuff in there, so I
Hmm.
didn't want them messing with it. But I have a pretty strong stomach after cleaning up some of the dog crap and all that fun stuff. You know that
Hmm.
I can handle just about anything. So where are you out of, Ariel?
I'm in Fredericksburg, Virginia.
Okay, and you're a dog trainer there. Your dog can too.
Yes.
How long have you been training dogs for?
Professionally 18 years, but I grew up with my mom as a dog trainer, so I wound up getting pretty early exposure to the craft.
What kind of dogs did your mom train?
Right now she has rough collies.
Is she
When I
still in the industry?
Yes, she does competition obedience and she teaches classes, does some private lessons, but she's, semi-retired.
Okay.
Um, but when I was growing up, we had a Borzoi and a mixed breed, and then she got into rough collies.
Rough collies, huh?
Hmm.
You know, I just bought a Skipper Key puppy. I'm into the little tiny but mighty breeds right
Hmm.
now.
I've
You
seen
know,
some of your videos.
yeah, they're so fun, man. And
Hmm.
she's got a great temperament. And that's one of the things that attracted me to this dog was I saw another colleague, Kelly Ingle from Know Thy Dog up in Montana. Um, and she posted up a video of one of her, the sister of this dog. And I immediately contacted her and looked for the breeder's information to see if I can possibly just find out more information. And I ended up buying the dog that night.
Hmm.
And yeah, I don't regret it one bit. I bought the dog. I've been doing the Bart Bellin Silver School, and now I'm going to do the Gold School in April.
Hmm.
And I just wanted a dog that I brought up through the system, um, just to see the outcome.
And you'll take her with you to the school in April?
Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. I'm looking for a Sprinter van right now, a new van to transport my dogs so I can take multiple dogs to me and just drive down to Missouri. It's quite the drive from Seattle down to Missouri. I haven't really mapped it out, but I'm sure it's going to be quite the journey.
Hmm.
And but I would love to bring all my dogs that I've been working with right now. It's interesting to see how the older dogs that are used to more of the classical like luring approach, because I'm basically doing it all operant right now, just letting them kind of do stuff, and I'm clicking what I like and not really being involved. And it's interesting to see the younger dogs and their eagerness versus the older dogs, and they a lot of times they give up a lot easier than the younger dogs do.
Hmm.
You know.
Yeah, I noticed that as well when I got first started learning about marker training and shaping. The dog I had at the time, my Malinois that just passed away last year, I had started her with just luring and a lot of guidance from me. So when I first started marker training, she would just stand there and look at me for, I mean, there was one time it was probably close to 15, 20 minutes. I was just waiting for her to do anything, and she was just standing there like a statue, staring, waiting for me to give her some sort of instruction. So it took some ingenuity to figure out how to get her to learn to problem solve. And it's funny because she was a detection dog, and in detection, she was very independent and she would figure things out on her own. But when it came to obedience tasks where she felt like she had to do something for me, she was so conditioned to just wait for me to give her some sort of direction. So I had to, kind of play around with manipulating the context and getting myself out of the picture as much as possible to get her to understand what I was trying to get her to do.
And did she eventually get it, or?
Yeah. And what I found was, like I said, the more I could just kind of eliminate myself either from view or just from any sort of influence. And usually if I manipulated the environment to where there was something for her to interact with, then she would pretty quickly figure out that, I wasn't going to help her and she needed to do something. Sometimes, depending on what it was, if it was something that was more her manipulating her own body versus interacting with the environment,
Okay.
I would maybe have to help her a little bit in the beginning and then fade out my guidance. And she seemed to take to that pretty easily too. Like once I kind of showed her and then stepped back, she would then try
Repeat
and,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes I think that that's what needs to happen, especially with those older dogs. Just a little hint, little, hey, try this,
Yeah.
or looking at what motivates them already, that you haven't really spurred in them, and just changing that context. I like how you said that,
Mm-hmm.
and making them think, hey, this is something that you like and you have invented. We already have a bunch of people joining us. We have Pete Austin says, I have a strong stomach exception for the anal glands. I always thought that was so strange about dogs, man. They have these two anal glands at their butt. John Sparks, hey, Bill and Ariel. Hey, John.
Hello.
John lives not too far from me, so I got to go
Okay.
harass him and make fun of him in person. Tosh from New Zealand, who doesn't live close to me.
Not very close at all.
That's right. Doug's Doggies and Andrew McKay, thank you for joining us, everybody. Oh, yeah, I still need to share this. I haven't even shared this. I need to share this on my page.
Okay.
And then do you want to do a quick bio of what you do and where you're located, Ariel, while I do some quick shares here?
Sure. Do you want me to talk about that? Is that what you're...
Yeah, so her name of her company, let's do that,
Yep.
is Your Dog Can Too.
Yes.
Which I think is a great name.
Thank you. So my company is Your Dog Can Too. I'm located in Fredericksburg, Virginia. I'd say that company is... My target is pet clientele, but I certainly have people from all different backgrounds working with me. I have some people that come to me for competition obedience, people that work with me for detection. I'm starting to do some distance lessons where, I'm still kind of feeling out how that's going to work, but, doing videos and chats with people that want to learn from me, but that can't physically be in my area. So I really kind of try to span the different working venues, competition obedience, protection sports, detection, tracking, pet obedience, and behavior. I have some people that just want to sit down and talk theory and learning principles with me, and I'm happy to do that as well. So I try to share my knowledge as much as possible. And, locally, I'm mostly working with pet obedience and behavior clients.
Most about the pet dog.
Yeah. I have a few people that are looking more towards competition and working dog venues in the local area.
Well, I mean, once you see it, you don't know what you don't know. That's what I liked what Jackie said on an earlier podcast or live stream. She's like, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And sometimes you see these sports, and it's pretty magnificent to see the dogs, excelling at something that they love. And, it's a great avenue for pet dog people to get into some working or some competitive obedience or, it's not too hard, once you know the standards and how to get there. And it's a great way to build a really solid, true relationship with that animal.
I was going to say the exact same thing that, I'm big on not just having my clients come to me and wanting me to fix a problem and give them back a dog that does everything perfectly. I'm big on education, communication, relationship. So I love when my clients go above and beyond. And I have one client that she never owned a dog before. She got a border collie.
Oh,
And I
wow.
told her, you know, you've got to challenge him. And she's on YouTube all the time, finding different tricks to teach him. And I've told her, you know, you're the dream client because you're going out there and you're doing things that, you know, people who've been training dogs for 10, 15 years can't do. So, I mean, that's, you know, that's the type of thing I try. I want my clients to go out and take what I've taught them and use it to build a lifelong relationship with their dog and to, you know, not just have a dog that sits around like a lump, but one that they can do different activities with and, you know, grow together with. So, you know,
Yeah,
sometimes it's
communicate.
hard to motivate people to get to that point, but, you know, ideally that's what I try to get people on board with.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they don't know what the potential is of the relationship sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And when that dog looks to them, or when they look to that dog and are super impressed by what that dog can do, I mean, it sparks some, just I don't know, just authentic relationships, and you're communicating with that animal. You are interspecies communication is what we teach, and we're helping people bring that relationship to its fullest potential. But that's what I tell people is that I'm not going to be here, and the relationship that I have with your dog is different than the dynamic that you two have. Every dog's an individual, every person's an individual, and then we have their environment, which is particular to that case. But the those three variables are always changing, and as a professional, we're coming in and we see patterns that lead to this relationship getting off into the ditch. And if we don't instill the why we do this, and no better reason, in my opinion, than to have experience through knowledge by working through that relationship, and having time for reflection with that client is important. And being like, look at where you've come from to where you're at now. I'm so proud of you, and it just makes me so happy that I can do what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But then there's the other flip side too, is I had to counsel people about euthanizing their dog, and they did so this weekend, and it just hit me hard when I found out about it. I was just like, okay, I mean, they made the right choice,
Mm-hmm.
but it's real, and
Mm-hmm.
it's something that, as a professional, it weighs on me, and I'm sure it does you too.
Yeah, it's, you know, never an easy recommendation to make. And, you know, I think you always wonder, is there something more we could do? Or, you know, especially in behavior cases, I think if it's, you know, the dog is, well, even in medical cases, you know, it's when is the right time to make that call and when have you exhausted all your options? You know, sometimes it's easier as the objective third party, but, you know, you still don't escape you know, the emotional impact of it.
Yeah, even as a third party, and I just had to reach out to the people, let them know I'm thinking about them, and that it has affected me as well.
Mm-hmm.
And when they're ready, after they heal and mourn, I would be happy to help them find a dog that might be better suited for their situation. And that's one of my favorite things to do, is to match make for people.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever found dogs for people?
Um, Never clients, like family members and friends I've helped. And that used to, years ago, when I first moved to this area, I was doing pet obedience before I went back to school. And that was one of the services I tried to push. And you know, I felt like people almost didn't want an outsider's input. You know, I mean, I think if you have a relationship established with someone already, it's easier to um, get them to take your advice. But I think, you know, having strangers come to someone that they don't know and don't have a relationship with to tell them,
You need
you
this
know,
dog,
yeah. And, you know, I feel like
and
a
the dog you
dog,
want is totally wrong for you.
yeah. And, you know, it's such a personal decision, and it's, you know, and it's an emotional decision because they're going to have an attachment to the dog. But I feel like to have someone who can take the emotion out of it and just look at it very pragmatically and say, okay, this is the lifestyle you lead. This is a dog that will not suit you, but here's one that probably would, but I think most people don't always think with logic, and they do get driven by emotion, and they see the cute fluffy puppy and they think, I need this husky to live in my apartment in New York with me. It's
Come
hard
back,
to.
please. What did that say? Do you know Denise White?
uh
Says, come back, please. I don't know what happened. Can everybody hear us? Cindy Ann McManus says, hey, hey. And
Hi, Cindy.
yours says, hello, sunshines.
Hello,
Kim
yours.
Cunningham says hello as well. Um, yeah, yeah. And this was, I mean, it's so cool when I can. Most of my clients have worked with their troubled dog, and once their dog has gone to heaven, usually through old age by far, is what
Hmm.
then I help them with the next
Yeah.
one when they're ready, and they
Hmm.
trust me because I've gotten them through the situation before, and a lot of times it's just a management situation.
Hmm.
That dog is being that dog,
Yep.
and with obedience, though, I mean, and focused attention, that definitely can. Um, why do you think obedience is important? Let me ask you that.
um for me, I think so you I'm sure you've heard Chris and I have discussions before, and and he very much says like behavior before obedience. And I don't disagree with that, but I also think it's difficult for a non-dog trainer and someone who doesn't have the natural presence and ability to know how to manipulate their body language and communicate with a dog. Um, I can walk into a room and my body language and my behavior will often influence the dog, and the owners always say, oh, he's acting totally different, or he's not doing all the things he normally does. um, so it's often hard for me to tell the owner act like this, because they, unless they can perfectly mimic what I'm doing and they can do it at the exact right time, I don't feel it's always the most effective. So I might be able to influence the dog's behavior, but I feel like sometimes it's helpful. Well, not sometimes. I feel like it's always helpful for the owners to understand how to control the dog's behavior through obedience, at least initially. So if you can't step in front of the dog and get their attention just by your body language and your presence, can we train the dog to obey a sit or an attention command so that you can interrupt that behavior using obedience? And then let's work from there, and let's get you looking at its body language and its triggers, and being able to step in sooner. So
Or
um
thresholds or overwhelm if that dog something's
yeah.
distracting. Work on
So
work on that.
I think, for me, it's a good foundation, and it allows them to have a way to communicate in a way. I can teach the dog to sit down, stay, come, heel, and now at least we have a common language where the owners can understand how to make the dog do things, and the dog understands what the owner is saying. And then from there we work on, okay, now I need to get change the household dynamic and change how you interact with this dog, and talk to you about management. But sometimes you just go in and the dogs are so out of control that I it's it's great if I can walk in and get the dog under control, but then I hand the leash back to the owner and the dog is all
Back.
over the place. So
Yeah.
I think obedience gives me that, kind of a framework to work inside. And this is with client dogs. I mean, with me and my own dogs, obedience is a way of interacting in a fun, enjoyable manner. But, and that's always the goal I have for my clients is I want you to, like, instead of coming home and, coddling your dog and feeding it lots of, fatty, sugary treats that it doesn't need, why don't you go out and do some obedience with it?
Yeah.
And that's always a secondary goal aside from being able to control the dog. This is a healthier way of interacting. If you can take your dog for a walk and have it, or go, instead of just throwing the ball for it 20 times, make it sit and down and heal before you give it the ball. So,
Yeah.
I think it's a good, um, it's a kind of a good way to link the the human's ability to work within the dog's communication.
It's like a Rosetta Stone
Yeah,
for the
yes.
dog.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
like think of a word for the linking the two, but that's a perfect.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
Rosetta Stone, for people that don't know, was Egyptian, hieroglyphs, Greek, and what was the third one? I gotta Google it, but it's basically that's how they were able to read hieroglyphs, is because then they knew
Hmm.
the language of this one, and then they were able to teach or to learn the glyphs meant, by basically, because it all said the same thing. It was a decree of Ptolemy the third, I think. um, but it's important, absolutely. I think, to start the process somewhere, right?
Hmm.
And if we have that common language that can easily be transferred, then the obedience. I mean, but it's esoteric sometimes too. Like, it's that the and sometimes even what you were saying about the stranger coming in. It's the same kind of perspective of, like, when you're telling the person the way that they feel about the animal isn't healthy, or right,
Hmm.
and they're like, but it's a feeling that we have together, and it's like an unspoken bond. And I'm just like, I have to remind them, look, you're paying me.
Yeah.
You're paying me money, and you've sought my diagnostics. You're like, what the heck is going
Hmm.
on here? And so I gotta tell you
Yeah.
what I think is going on here. And that's I think our role as a professional, to be truthful, and the truth should come first.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
if we
Telling people what they want to hear isn't going to help their situation.
No, it's not going to help the situation. In fact, it might just make it worse. And sometimes the truth is brutal. I tell people, um, it's something that it requires us to look at it pragmatically, and a lot of times people try to think with those emotions. And the dog is a predator, is an apex predator. There's certain things that motivate this animal, and there's certain parts that we have in our body that gives us a whole different experience on this world. And the way that we process information, we could time travel in our mind, where we have a prefrontal cortex or a neocortex. A dog has a limbic system, which isn't the same as us. We have that as well, but we have a buffer that kind of rises above, that navigates that, right?
Hmm.
And you're a biologist, right? Did you study?
Yes, biology and neuroscience.
So what made you study that?
Um, so initially, I wasn't in 2013. I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep working with dogs or not. I mean, I knew I still wanted to personally, but I didn't know if I wanted to continue pursuing a career with dogs. So,
Other people's
um,
dogs.
yeah. So I started going back to school, and I knew I liked psychology, and I knew I liked, more of the hard sciences, but I wasn't really sure what direction I wanted to go. And then I saw at the university I went to, there was a neuroscience minor, which incorporated biology and psychology. And I really found I was more interested in biology because I think I like the hard sciences because you can, cut stuff open and look at cells and look at neurons
Right.
and look at, when neurons fire. And I think psychology can be a little frustrating sometimes because you're not cutting things open and looking at the structures, but you're just kind of sometimes making educated assumptions based upon behavior. I mean, often.
Yeah.
Um,
But it's more philosophical than
yeah, and
it is.
a lot of the models are, they're constantly changing based upon someone's interpretation. So I wasn't sure I wanted to, full on study psychology. So neuroscience was, kind of the good go between because I had classes in biopsychology and psychopharmacology and I was able to take some classes in behavior and learning, and plus all
Wow.
the biology classes where I was, learning about the brain and physiology. So, um,
The most complex, instrument in the universe that we know of, right, is our brain.
the human brain, yep, or that we don't understand yet.
Yeah.
Um, there, maybe more complex brains. We're still, we like to think the human brain is the most complex, but
The dolphin brain.
yeah, dolphins are.
That's pretty incredible. I can show you dolphin brain. And I also need to do the Rosetta Stone.
And what's the dolphins can basically shut down one side of their brain, so half of their brain can sleep while the other half still functions. So
Wild.
yeah, that's
I wish I
amazing,
could do that.
right? We'd be so much more productive if we could turn like this half of my brain is sleeping right now, but
Especially when I'm blowing glass or something, just put on my artistic side and can other creatures do that?
um, I don't know. I know specifically dolphins can. Um,
Whoa, look at this. You guys gotta see this because I mean the folds, what are significant about the folds in the human brain?
it allows for more surface area. So by folding it up and like, you can have a piece of paper and it would take up this much space, but if you crumple it up, it takes up way less space. So you can fit a lot more surface area by
Can you
having
see
all
that?
the, sorry, I'm looking at the brains.
Yeah, no, isn't that so cool? I hope there's no
Are you
like
still there? I don't
explicit.
hear you.
Can you hear me? Check, check, 1, 2, 3. Hold on. Can you hear me now?
Now I can.
Weird. Okay, the thing's messing up because you should be able to hear me when that thing was up,
I
but
can't see you now, but I can hear you.
you can't see me now. Weird.
Nope.
Okay, I'm here and I can see you. Everybody, can
Okay.
you see us and hear us? Let's make sure that the people that are watching live can see us and hear us. I see people saying very cool about the brain, but just
Mm-hmm.
think about that, And I tell people now the enteric nervous system, the gut. I mean, they call it
Mm-hmm.
the second brain, but I mean, some people are even calling it the first brain because if we take all of our intestines and stomach and laid it out, we'd have about the area of a tennis court,
Mm-hmm.
and all the folds and stuff that, and then the microbiome, excuse me, that we have, and even the fecal transplants and all this stuff that are,
Yep.
it's wild, man. And we'd be joking about this stuff, but now I'm watching videos like very, very interested, riveted.
Yep. Oh, so you had asked. So the reason I wanted to study the brain, most specifically, um, was really came from kind of being a veteran and seeing how poorly mental illness was handled by a lot of medical professionals.
Wow, yes,
So
it's a
I was
huge,
really interested in alternative therapies for affective disorders. Hi, Linda. I see Linda's
yeah.
message.
And thanks everybody
So
for letting us know you can hear and see us.
so yeah, so that that kind of drew me down that path, and then I just became more and more interested in the brain and behavior, and um, because it's just something that we know so little about.
Well, the
It's hard.
TBI, to traumatic brain injuries that have
Hmm.
happened, and to so many veterans. And not only that, but I just saw an article, Ariel, about homelessness, and 85% of them have a TBI or a record of brain injury. Isn't that
Hmm.
wild? Or some sort of mental illness.
Yep, and it's unfortunate that um, just in the last few years, veterans have been going to extreme measures, setting themselves on fire,
Mm.
at VA hospitals to kind of protest the lack of quality care. And I've noticed it has gotten dramatically better. Um, and they're trying to make more other treatments aside from just medication available. So I think
Yeah.
that's a plus. But there's some people that don't know what's available to them or just aren't able to take advantage of those resources, and there's not always a place for them. They don't feel like they can live within the confines of normal society.
And it's real, man. When you have these crippling anxiety or depression, and people don't see it, but I mean, you experience it every breath that you take. I can't encourage people enough to get mental help.
Hmm.
And just to talk to people and just know that there's people there. I have a counselor that I see very often. In fact, I have an appointment with her tomorrow. After my father passed away, my dad or my dog passed away this year as well, and just a lot of things that have happened. And it's something that I think we need to talk about, especially men as well. I think that there's a void in this world that needs to be filled with people that care and help other people and can help them see, um, or even let them know, hey, look, it's okay to feel this way. It's okay,
Hmm.
to be in this hole. It's okay, but there's a ladder I'm going to climb out, and you're welcome to follow me out. I don't know if you knew that there's a way out,
Hmm.
and now, and you've been working with pharmacology, and I mean, there's just so much that has been um, done in the last 50 years. I was watching a documentary on lobotomies, and they gave the like a Nobel Peace Prize or something to this guy that was doing these lobotomies, and that was how they fixed people,
That
and
was cutting edge back then.
literally,
Yeah.
and how you can do it in an afternoon, like an office visit, and it just makes me, even talking about it makes me a little queasy,
Hmm.
because we know deep down that that's wrong, and that there is um, a better way, and I think that we're along that kind of messy middle as a society in so many ways, with technology, with pharmaceuticals, with healthcare in general,
Hmm.
and dog training too.
Yeah. To bring it back around.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what's beautiful about talking to people and doing these interviews, is just kind of geeking out on dogs, and I've learned so much through the people that I've talked to. Um, Now, when you were a young girl, did you take dogs through and get them ribbons and stuff in obedience? Did you help your mom with that?
No, she did. I don't think I ever showed any of her dogs. I was mostly just the helper. I'd, run
Gopher.
around and try and distract the dogs, and I would help her train them sometimes, but she was the one that took them in the ring. I don't recall ever taking any of her dogs through to work them.
What do you think is the biggest difference that you've seen in the past, couple decades in the showing industry? Is that, the dog showing world, I should say?
Um, I would say I feel like the um dogs now are a lot more kind of flashy. There's a word I'm searching for, but it's not coming to me.
Okay.
I think it was more utilitarian, and they weren't looking for really precise, flashy, fast obedience. And the AKC obedience, they're still not a fan of the heads up, really animated healing, but you definitely see dogs that are um, like very fast, intense, enthusiastic. Whereas I think, I remember my mom's earlier dogs, they were more kind of steady. They
Bulletproof.
wouldn't necessarily have like heads up healing, an attention heal, but they were, and the training I think was more compulsion.
Okay.
She's definitely, over the years, I've watched her incorporate a lot more and more reward based training and shaping and marker training. But her first dog, I don't even know that she used food rewards with. And that was kind of the norm.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm not saying it's good or bad. I think it's a different picture and a different result that you get now. And there's some people that still prefer kind of more functional obedience, and there's people that really want the dramatic, showy obedience. Um, So, and I like that. I like that you can, you can kind of know what venue prefers what.
Yeah.
And you can, if you want a really flashy heads up attention heel, you can compete in one sport or one venue. And if you want, more functional, looser, not like laser focused prancing heel, you can compete
Precise.
in another. Yeah. Yep. Um, but I do think the attitude of competitors is a little bit more, trying to, instead of just make the dog do everything, like try to get the dog engaged and want to do it, regardless of what approach you're taking.
Yeah, I think that because it just looks great. I mean, when you have a dog that is out there being flashy or, it's impressive.
Hmm. It's hard for me to not be biased because I do like that, but I recognize that that's not for everybody. But to me, I'm like,
Absolutely.
I love seeing dogs that are fast and flashy, and it's fun for me to train. But
Well, I
it's.
remember talking to Jay Jack, and he has that GRC, that competition sports, dog sports that he's doing now.
Mhm.
And we were at the IACP conference, and they had one of those dogs that was really flashy with obedience. And he's like, "Now just be with your dog and just kick it with the dog." And the dog did not know what to do.
Mhm.
It's so used to, just like what we were saying about getting the direction from us, is that once it's just basically the same thing that happened to your girl or my guy. My guy, instead of standing there looking at me, he just lays down and goes to sleep.
Like you're not
He's
going
like,
to tell me what to do, so.
yeah, and he'll just zonk right out. But I've also taught him, look, I want you calm.
Mhm.
Especially if you don't know what to do, then just relax and you're going to be good. But if as soon as you start flipping out, because I take him everywhere with me, um, and that's it. It's just different strokes for different folks, but what you give in one end is going to take from another. Does that make
Mhm.
sense? And
Yeah.
so it might as well have a more rounded approach and see where have that full that big tire where you take a tire and slice it up like a pizza, and then we have the driviness, we have the stability, we have the all that stuff, and then just make sure that you have that full tire.
Mhm.
I think so.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, cool. At least that makes sense to you.
It does. I still can't
Sometimes I
see you,
just
so I
oh, you
can't see any
can't.
of your. No, it's just a gray
Crap.
screen.
Let me see. Can you see me now?
Nope.
I
I can
think we
hear you though.
switched on the screen though. Okay,
As
but
long as
people
other
can.
people can see and hear us, it's fine.
Yeah, I think we're good on that.
As long
But
as you're not
I think
gesturing or making facial expressions that I'm missing.
yeah, I'm not. I'm just standing here,
Okay.
or sitting here, I should say. Oh, here we go. Mr. Phrase is dropping in here. What are your thoughts on interspecies canine human psychology, specifically the dog's perception of the owner and different family members' work and anthropomorphic opportunity?
I'm not totally sure what.
How do you think
Um.
that the dog perceives the people, the owner
Yeah,
and
I
different
get that
family
part.
members,
Just the work and the
interspecies?
anthropomorphic how the dog perceive. Well, you know what? Let me just answer the first part of the question. Um, so what I've noticed, even just with my own dogs, or my mom's dogs that I've spent lots of time with, um, they certainly have their own distinct relationships with different individuals. Like one thing I noticed about Blitzen, my Malinois that passed away last year, she was a lot more respectful, I'll say, with women. My mom or my sister could give her a command and she would respond to them nearly as well as she would to me. And she was um, very deferent with them, like she wasn't pushy. Um, and I was the only owner she had that taught her all her commands. And then most of the decoys that she bit were men, so I would
Ah.
notice like when she would interact with men, she would often like be very pushy with them, and not aggressive, but she would throw her body against them and jump on them, and if they gave her commands she would just ignore them. So and I always found that interesting because she was very
She's
um
feminist. Feminist dog.
It's like I bite men. I don't listen to them.
Yeah, that's right.
And every household I go into, um, I can look at how the dog interacts with the humans and just kind of
Get an idea.
get a ton of insight on just how the humans interact with each other. So, I think, I don't know. I try not to talk in terms of dominant, who's dominant and who's submissive, because I know that's, people say dominance theory doesn't exist. And,
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into that argument, but you can definitely tell who, the dog has certain humans that it's more respectful of and certain humans that it's less respectful of. And,
Yeah.
but when we talk, maybe the anthropomorphic opportunity, I'm not sure if what he's talking about is like when people say, "Oh, my dog loves me," or "My dog,"
Anthropomorphizing the dog,
yeah.
I think.
And we don't know. It's just like I was talking to Chris about this the other day. When you talk about cognitive, cognitive psychology, or trying to evaluate dogs or humans on a cognitive level, it's such a subjective experience.
Yes.
What I might understand as love, for instance, may be totally different than what you understand as love. And there may be some similarities where we can talk about it, but now we're going to say, okay, this dog loves something. Well, I think it's better if we define, what do we mean by that?
Yeah, we need
Why do
an
you,
objective definition.
yeah, why do
Not
you
a,
say the dog loves that? Is it something
yeah.
that they do often? And why would you say the dog loves you? And we get that all the time with aggressive dogs. I'm sure you hear it too. Like, oh, I know he loves me, but he bites me. Well, then what makes you say that he loves you? Well, he wants, he comes up and he pushes me because he wants me to pet him. Well, that's not love. That's the dog demanding something from you.
Yeah. Being bossy.
Yeah. So I
Being
feel
bully.
like that's, as dog trainers, we have to pick apart those, anthropomorphisms when we deal with clients that the dog is doing something out of spite, or the dog loves this, or the dog hates this. Often it's their projections, and we have to ask the questions in terms of behavior. Well, don't tell me what you think your dog feels, tell me what your dog does.
Yes.
Or don't tell me what you think your dog thinks, tell me what your
What
dog's
happened?
reaction is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
I try to stay, even with my own dogs, I try to just be very objective about looking at their behavior. I mean, I can tell if they
We're
enjoy
emotionally
something.
invested too.
Yeah.
That's why we do this.
And if I say my dog enjoys something, it's because he wants to do it.
Yeah.
But whether he sits around thinking like, "Oh, I love that ball I play with so much," I'll never know. So,
Yeah.
I'm
Be
not gonna.
dreams of balls. And,
Yeah.
you know.
So I don't know if I answered Chris's questions, but if I didn't,
I'm
you
sure
can,
he'll chime in.
yeah.
Andrew McCrae, along that subject, what's a good way to deal with canine jealousies over human attention?
So there's another one. So I try not to use the term jealousy again, because I think
Possessiveness? What do you?
I usually use the term possessiveness, because to
Okay.
me, I think that allows me to explain it better in dog terms.
Okay.
The dog sees something as a resource, so it sees the human as a resource, and it's basically telling other dogs or other people, this is my resource, you stay away. So my way of addressing that is, I don't allow dogs to own me. I'm not the dog's possession. And while I may be a resource to them because I provide them things that they need,
Comfort.
or things that they want,
Right.
I'm still like, my dog can't come over and claim me. If they do, I I'm the one that then dictates their behavior and tells them, no, go lay down over there. If
Yeah.
you're going to claim me, now you lose the privilege of even being in my space.
It's almost the antithesis of what they were expecting.
Yeah. So instead of like getting me all to themselves, they get nothing. And, and I think that's also, again, a relationship dynamic issue where if the dog thinks it can push the other dogs around and claim me, then the dog has too much power in the relationships, and,
Yeah.
needs to perhaps be managed, and understand that, it doesn't get to boss everyone around. That I'm the boss and I'm going to be a fair boss, but, we're not going to.
It's not up to you, period. That's what
Yeah.
I tell people. Chris just chimed in again. How do dogs interpret the opportunity that owners create through anthropomorphic canine misinterpretation? Pet working stray. So how do dogs interpret the opportunity that the owners create through anthropomorphic canine misinterpretation?
I feel
So,
like
but
Chris is like
mislabeling
stumping me right now.
mislabeling a behavior, how do dogs or how do dogs interpret that opportunity? I think that they look at you as a sucker sometimes. If they're not seeing you, it's not a relationship built in trust. I don't know.
I'm still trying to sort through the question. Pet working stray.
Pet working straight. Oh, rat studies. We got a question about the rat studies. So
So
we'll come.
yeah,
Let's see if we can put this one to rest really
okay.
quick.
With Chris's question.
Yeah. What do you?
So I'm thinking maybe like how we label the dogs, like, okay, this is my pet dog, this is my working dog. This was a stray dog that was, I rescued and was abused. Um, I think the dogs perceive how we interact with them. So, if I say this is my pet dog and I'm just going to snuggle it and coddle it and not have any expectations of it, it doesn't know that it doesn't have a job. It just knows you are giving me things for free, and you're giving me free attention, and you're giving me free food, and you're fawning all over me and not expecting anything of me. And then the working dog, um, like I know some working dog people, like their dogs can do whatever they want because they're working dogs, and they get to, jump on top of the furniture and bark at everybody that walks by the car, because they're a working dog. But to me, my dog can have a job, but I can also have, control and structure over it.
That's part of the job. Is
Yeah, and
etiquette.
I think we do the dogs an injustice by, kind of putting them in these categories that they don't understand anyway. They're basing their behavior off of what's reinforced and what's punished.
Well, it's like
So
rich kids, man. The struggle. I mean, it's if you ever know somebody that has always had something handed to them, they really don't have a clue about what life is all about. And not only that, but they need that handout pretty much their whole life because they can't really get a grip on the real world.
mhm.
And there's a guy, Thomas J. Stanley, whose PhD, he's actually passed away, but he wrote a bunch of books studying the affluence and what happens to people that are given too much. And even there was a study on the rats where they built that utopia,
Mhm.
where they gave the rats everything they needed, and they saw some pretty peculiar behavior coming out of these rats, and same thing that we see in human beings, and same thing that we see in dogs. When they're just given too much without that why. I don't really know. I mean, because of the emotional aspect. Linda says dogs seek comfort like people seek comfort. Of course, they are going to prefer and seek those opportunities.
What I think is interesting though, so like for instance, running on a treadmill or running in general, I don't find it particularly comfortable right now. I'm out of shape. I think a lot of lazy couch potato dogs wouldn't enjoy it. But you often see, like, when people start running or when you start like putting dogs on treadmills, they become obsessed with it and they'll choose to get on the treadmill and run. Or, when I was like in shape and running all the time, I'd go out in the cold and the rain. Um, and I was actually seeking discomfort because I got a different sort of satisfaction out of the activity. So, not that I disagree with Linda. I do think they do seek comfort like people do, but I think you can also reprogram that. And by creating a habit and, doing something long enough, the dogs will eventually start seeking out things that are, I guess it does become comfortable if you run every day. That becomes your new source, new sense of
Right.
comfort.
It,
Um,
it bridges a gap,
yeah, but
between where they're at and
I
where
think
they're.
we can use that to our advantage. You can make your dog seek something it wouldn't necessarily want to do on its own just by getting it into a routine.
Well, not only that, but it benefits us and that dog by cycling, having our system kind of cycle through when we are athletic, and the lymph node, the lymphatic system, all that stuff is functioning. We're getting a lot of fluid intake. I hate being hot, and I suffered from heat stroke
Hmm.
when I was younger, and now I do hot yoga. And after I'm 15 minutes in, I'm looking at that door, and I just want to leave. I want to run out of that room.
Hmm.
But when I'm done with it, and later on in that day, I mean, you feel good, and clears your mind. And not only that, but even like with men with confrontation, I think that it would help a lot of men just settle down, because I mean, I'm pretty easy going after yoga. I'm just like,
Hmm.
whatever, we'll figure it out, So, but if not, then it could be. Um, I just had to make that correction. What's going on here? Interest, whatever. We got a bunch of people that are a question I want to catch up on here. So,
Okay.
can you talk a bit about your rat studies?
Yeah, she's talking about the ones that I did
Yeah,
as a student.
yeah, I believe so. This is
Um,
Jackie. Jackie's. I love Jackie.
so the studies, um, the research that I did, my independent research was on the effects of exercise enrichment on olfactory bulb neurogenesis.
Huh.
Um, and also behavior. We did some behavioral testing, and then we were going to stain
So
the.
olfactory is nose,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
sense
Yeah.
of
So,
smell.
and the link. So, let's see. Um, there is a link between the size of the olfactory bulb and um, basically like how affected people are by depression and anxiety. Um, I'm trying to remember the exact study that was done. I think it was women with depression. They had them do an exercise regimen that consisted. So they found that running at a consistent pace, basically like for I think 30 to 60 minutes,
Okay.
um, has the greatest effect on neurogenesis and affective disorders. And they found that the size of the olfactory bulb changed. So it's just odd because, who would think the part of your brain that processes olfactory information would have any effect on your mood, but there does seem to be a link there. Um, so with the rats, we were looking at the. I had some rats that were in deprived conditions, so they were isolated. They didn't have any sort of social enrichment. They were basically. It was kind of cruel. It was sad because they were just in. Rats are very social creatures. So if you put them in a cage alone, and anyone that owns rats, if they're just in a cage alone with nothing to do, it's really detrimental to them. And
They don't live
um,
long.
yeah, and the study was only I think it was 12 weeks, but we can't ask a rat, are you feeling depressed, are you feeling anxious, but you can look at behaviors, and they call them depression like or anxiety like behaviors. So the rats will do certain things. They'll pull their hair out, they'll chew on their tails, they'll do like weird burrowing behaviors, and like rubbing their bodies in certain ways. um
Repetitive movements and
yeah, like
OCD
stereotypic
almost.
behaviors.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and like if you go to the zoo, if you look at the elephants, elephants are big on doing stereotypic behaviors. Like they'll like pick up their feet and rock, or they'll swing their trunks.
Okay.
Basically things that are like have no biological usage, but they're just like,
Like a
it's almost
steam vent, you know?
like it's self-soothing kind of.
Okay.
So I had rats that were in an impoverished conditions, and then ones that were in enriched conditions. And then I had ones that were isolated, they were living alone, and ones that were living in social groups. So the enriched rats had different toys. I would switch out their toys at different times, and they would have running wheels. We looked at how long each rat ran for. And then at the end of the study, I did different tests. I did like what was called a Y maze, basically seeing if how the rat explores an unfamiliar maze, a novel object recognition test. So to see how long a rat interacts with a novel object that they've never seen before. I did some tests of olfaction.
Just
Um,
introducing different smells and stuff.
well, what we did with them was just simply did a buried food test. So we put them in a sterile cage with wood chips, and then we bury a piece of food and see how long it takes them to find it, or if they do find it. Because rats naturally want to explore their environment.
Yeah.
So if they go in there and they just sit, that's a very abnormal behavior. If they go in and they start exploring, they usually find the food. So it's a good indication of how normal the rat is acting. Um, so I did those behavioral tests, and then we dissected them and we preserved their brains. And I never actually got to the point of staining the brains because we had trouble with the cryostat that sliced them. But the next step would have been to stain them and actually look at the difference in neurogenesis in the impoverished isolated rats versus the enriched social rats. What we expected was the enriched social rats would have more neurogenesis, specifically in the olfactory bulb. Um,
Is that what your
and
findings?
so we didn't get to do the
Because
staining
of
part.
the
Yeah,
cryo mess
um,
up?
but the behavioral test did show that there was some significant changes in the behavior between the impoverished isolated rats and the enriched social rats. So basically, the enriched social rats did better at the tests overall. There was a couple outliers, but as a whole, it supported other studies that kind of common sense. Like if you sit around by yourself and do nothing and don't interact with the world or do different activities, you're
Stare in your
probably
box all day?
yeah, you're probably not going to be as cognitively healthy as someone that's out there exercising and interacting with other people. um, and there's a lot of studies with the human studies. They can't dissect brains and they can't put them through invasive testing, or any kind of um,
Ethically, I mean,
yeah,
it's ethically.
there's only certain tests that you can do with humans. So we use rats as models, but um, the studies that have been done on humans, which are observational, they ask the people, how are you feeling, and they can do certain non-invasive brain scans, but they found that.
fMRIs.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yep,
Can they do fMRIs on rats, or is that just too small of a brain?
you can do an fMRI on a rat. It's just the issue with fMRIs on rats is, you'd have to do something where you're able to control the stimuli.
Hmm.
Whereas humans, you can have them think about certain things,
Right. Or
and you can,
flash pictures, or
yeah.
in front of their face.
Whereas with the rat, it's like you can't tell the rat, "Hey, think about something happy," or "Look at this picture of a piece of cheese." um, so it's a little that in that sense, it's complicated to be able to know what stimulus is affecting what brain region, because you have to know exactly what the rat is responding to. Whereas with a human, it's easier. The human can say, "Okay, I'm thinking about candy," or "I'm thinking about
Yeah.
someone I love," or "I'm looking at this picture."
Yeah. Well, we could see what areas light up too. So about the comfort, she says that you've been making that correction since the day you've met. Um, So Jackie says, how this and the science you saw that were related. Okay, I think this was about something. Um, you have a ton of knowledge. Beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you.
People are saying, listen, this lady has some knowledge,
Thank you.
And so um, this is Domi says, I think people are not respecting themselves around dogs. I like my space at home. I like to not to worry about the dog on the walk, etc. Yeah, me too. And then Linda says, me too. Yep. Love that answer. Please speak about your research and its relationship. You have so much to share. Doesn't running release a source of dopamine?
Um, so I know there's like lately dopamine has been like a big buzzword.
Yeah.
Um, the
For the doctor, what is his freaking name?
Sapolsky.
Sapolsky. Thank you.
Yeah.
The
So
lottery
I
or
do
the
want to take this opportunity to clarify one thing. So Sapolsky's video, he's actually talking about research that's done by Wolfram Schultz. So Sapolsky has he's a neuroendocrinologist, I believe, and he has done a ton of research on
that
the
hormones.
brain and the the hormones and the different neurotransmitters. He goes and studies a troop of baboons. I don't know if he's still doing it, but I don't remember where it was that he actually mentioned this. But the dopamine jackpot study was done by Wolfram Schultz, and I can find the name of the study. I was actually just reading it the other day. So Wolfram Schultz has done a ton of research on dopamine and dopamine as a reward, dopamine and reward prediction error. So essentially, dopamine is released when there's a difference between what the animal expects and what it receives, both positive and negative. And I mean that in like the reward is better than it expects or worse than it expects, or it's just totally unexpected and the animal is like, oh wow, this amazing thing just happened. But anyway, if you are interested in more reading more about dopamine as it relates to rewards and behavior, Wolfram Schultz is he's got tons of studies like back from like maybe the 70s and 80s
Yeah.
up until recently. So
And I have the Cambridge neuroscience community. I'm looking at his bio.
mm-hmm.
Professor of neuroscience, Department of Physiology, Development of Neuroscience. Yeah, he's got. Let's say our group is interested to relate mechanics of brain activity to measurable behavior. We combine neurophysiological imaging and behavioral techniques to investigate the neural correlates of goal-directed. Wow.
Probably goal-directed behavior.
I think they left out a word.
Yeah, well, it's like Mad Libs.
Yeah, fill it in.
So as far as running and dopamine, it's always hard to say like, oh yes, for sure, this neurotransmitter is released at this time, because without actually having probes and doing, invasive stuff,
right.
You have to know what neurons are firing when. But yeah, I mean, we talk about endorphins being released when you're running, and certainly, dopamine. Another like
the runner's high.
Cortisol regulation has a lot to do with running and how stressing the body while you're running releases cortisol, and then
which is the fight or flight. It makes sense, right? Because that's involved with fight or
it's
flight.
It's considered a stress hormone, but
okay.
The thing is, it's actually not always bad to have high cortisol levels, especially like if you're purposely stressing your body. You can essentially condition your body like, okay, you're releasing cortisol because you're stressed when you're running, and then your body adapts to those higher levels of cortisol and then learns to kind of down regulate cortisol release. So then you're your overall stress level is reduced because your overall cortisol release has been down regulated. But
That's like my
serotonin.
yoga brain, what I was just talking about. I don't get
Yeah,
stressed.
yeah.
I'm like, so,
Yep. So the hot yoga stresses you in the beginning and you get like the cortisol release, and then your body's like, oh, okay, it's just yoga. We can
yeah.
relax.
And I
And then
drive home, I'm just like, yeah,
yeah.
dude, go ahead, man. I don't care. You just cut me off. I don't care.
But serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, uh, you know, those are kind of the big neurotransmitters. GABA,
GABA
glutamate.
aminobutyric acid. Gamma aminobutyric acid.
Yeah,
That
GABA's like the relaxation
it
hormone.
soothes the strands between the hypothalamus and the amygdala, I believe. It's you know what, the my wife is on it. Even dogs actually. We were just talking about that with Joni 2 episodes back on how GABA and introduction of a GABA supplement has helped a lot of these dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, listen to that. I want to go back and listen to that. But yeah, it's and with anxiety, they wanted they wanted my wife to take some weird medicine. I can't remember the name of it, but it freaked her out, like the medicine that they gave her. And then I was like, you know what? I did some research about this GABA, and that's all she needs is L-tryptophan and some GABA, and she's good to go.
Mm-hmm.
And some methylfolate and a couple other things too. Rats are smart as hell. They are. I think we sell animals short, and just like the dolphin, look at that dolphin brain compared to our brain. It's bigger, and those folds are incredible. I think that, there's something there. Sounds like that rat part research addiction. Yeah.
Oh yeah, can I talk about that for a second? Because I thought that was
Absolutely.
so. Just real quick. So we always talk about like um people that are addicts. They just have no self-control and they just need to get it together. I'm not saying everyone says that. So they did this study. They got rats addicted to cocaine, essentially. I'll just kind of sum it up really quickly. So they get these rats addicted to cocaine, and then they put a bunch of rats in cages alone, and then they put some other rats in this rat park, and they give them all free access to cocaine, so they can press this little lever and they can get cocaine injected into their brain or drink it or whatever. So they found that the rats that were isolated did cocaine until they died. They killed themselves. The ones in rat park maybe like occasionally would go and like self-administer the cocaine, but wean themselves off of it, and most of them like weren't even self-administering and were happy, healthy, lived long rat lives because they had other rats to hang out with and they had like a cool place to live. And I just think that says a whole lot about how we deal with mental illness and addiction. And
I
I
think
think
that it's the causation of a bunch of mental illness and
yeah,
addiction.
yeah, like is it are addicts isolated because they're addicts, or yeah, do they isolate themselves because they're addicts and they want to be away from people, or are they addicts
because
because
they're isolated.
they don't have the social support? And I think
Well, there's the different types of loneliness too. Like there's a loneliness that you feel like if you're like I'm out in the sticks, like I don't see people, which is fine. But there's also loneliness too, where you're surrounded by people and you don't feel understood or communicate. You can't communicate effectively, or there's that type of loneliness too, and that's another aspect of the mental health that can help people, in the network,
mm-hmm,
and to, one of my favorite sayings is your network is your net worth, and I think that study proves that.
mm-hmm,
I live in Boston City, I know, or Baltimore City. Yeah, heck yeah, you do. I mean, we
mm-hmm.
were just talking about that. Jackie, you got a fan in Jackie. Jackie's excellent. Jackie actually runs the school, the Silver, or she hosts the Bart Bellin School in Missouri. And I
Mm-hmm.
know that if you ever want to go down and do a seminar or anything, that she would be happy to host you. I know it's difficult to talk about in the dog world. Um, what are you talking about there, Jackie? It's difficult. What's difficult to talk about in the dog world? Um, What? I have to actually interact with people?
People.
You are brave and awesome, Jackie says. So, yeah. Similar studies recently done with dogs using pictures. Oh, okay. They're talking about the fMRIs.
fMRI.
Okay, we're starting to
Hmm.
get back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
Talking about dogs
Sapolsky,
again.
love this. Yeah, we're talking about Sapolsky. Stress can be sometimes be good. I mean, that struggle is a biological requirement for growth. We talk about that, and what do you think about that? The struggle is a biological requirement for growth.
Well, I mean, so if you talk about how the environment affects our gene expression, if
Epigenetics.
yep, so they find that a reasonable amount of early life, early lifetime stress can actually help you be more resilient, because your genes learn to adapt. They don't learn, but
Yeah,
your certain genes
they're
will
taking in
turn
that
on.
information, and be like, okay, where
Yep.
are we
So
at?
the stress of the environment will cause certain genes to be expressed that will then help you become a more resilient adult individual. Now, of course, too much stress, too much bad stress, especially acute traumatic, or
PTSD.
or
Yeah,
chronic, overwhelming chronic stress,
yeah.
that is detrimental. But if I guess if it was possible to lead a totally stress-free life for your entire life, maybe that would be ideal. But I mean, when is that ever possible? At some point you're going to encounter some sort of stressor.
Don't miss this.
So
Stress is
it's better
vital.
to yeah, it's better to have had previous experience dealing with stress and learning how to work through it.
Yes.
And stress that's manageable, like putting your body under stress when you work out, or putting your mind under stress when you take exams.
There's that weird bifurcation where it actually empowers you to drive you forward, but then there's that one point that it's like helplessness, and then there's
Yeah,
that learned helplessness. Like once that
yeah,
happens even more, then you don't even try.
inescapable, overwhelming stress is what drives the learned
And that was
helplessness.
a rat study too, where they would be on the plate, and when they learned how to jump off, but once they took away that option, some of the rats would just flatten out and give up.
Hmm.
Can you speak about your biggest takeaway with your experiments, Ariel?
Um, so like my own experiment, and then the other ones that I helped out with, and I took a couple research intensive classes where we had to design our own experiments, and all of them I kind of centered around how the environment affects an animal. I wasn't studying humans, but um, and I think all of them were applicable to things that we deal with on a daily basis. Interacting with other people, exercising, different contaminants in the environment, um, and I think I honestly I think I learned more from doing all the background research and having to read 20, 30, 40 studies to prepare myself to do my own experiments, and just reading how, and I feel hypocritical saying this, but just getting outside and being active, how important that is to every organism out there. If you take an organism and you put a human and you stick them in a house and they don't have any kind of, they don't go outside, they don't interact with other people. If you take a dog and you stick it in a kennel, you take a rat and you stick it in a cage, it's going to do abnormal, unhealthy things. And it's going to develop diseases and illnesses, especially of the mind. So I think all of the studies that I looked at were just about how to enrich yourself cognitively and through different means, not necessarily sitting down and reading a book, but going out and running, going out and just socializing with people. And I think that is something I think about all the time. When I'm feeling unmotivated and I'm feeling like depression is overwhelming, or my anxiety is you know borderline debilitating, and I think, you know what, I know the answer. I know if I just get out and I go do something, like, it's not just I'm going to be like, oh, I feel better in the moment. It's actually changing my brain. And okay, to get to the biggest takeaway, we can change our brains. And I think that is really powerful,
Yeah.
that you can physically change the anatomical structure of your brain by doing certain activities, some of which that are not even related to distinct cognitive processes. Like, you can change your brain by running. And
Have you read
if anyone
the Brain That
is,
Changes Itself?
yeah, that's an awesome one. And then also The Brain by David
Oh,
Eagleman.
hold on, I'm getting both of
Um,
these on the comments here.
The Brain That Changes Itself is good.
Well, the one about the brain that changes himself with the professor that had the stroke, and the son letting him just crawl around. And
Mm-hmm.
I
Like,
that I mean, just to see, like, imagining that, like, how much, that we would be like, no, 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 like, what are you doing? Like, I could, but
yeah, like actually forcing, like, they take stroke patients and they'll like bind their good side and say, like, if you want to eat, you have to use your paralyzed hand. And they're like, well, it's paralyzed. How do I do it? But by forcing it, they can force their brain to regenerate. And it may not, it may regenerate different pathways around the damaged one. But The Brain by David Eagleman is it's a book, but they also did a documentary on PBS, and the documentary is incredibly
I'm gonna watch
fascinating.
it tonight. So the
Yeah,
brain by
it's
David. So I just put the brain that changes itself in the comments, and then the brain, and then Dr. Amen too up here, who's doing all those scans. Oh, the brain, they have it on Prime Video, you guys. So if you have Amazon Prime, it is available to watch. And let me put up a link to the brain here.
The Brain by David Eagleman.
Yep, it's available.
Oh, it's on
Yep.
Prime. I didn't know that. I
Haha.
have the DVDs, but they're not always convenient.
Yeah,
So,
it's on Prime. And you can just buy it too, so you can just watch it on the little boxes that are changing our brain too, man. Those boxes are
yeah.
changing the way that, well, and we talk about that in Napopo. We talked about operant versus classical, and how this GPS, try to find the you just took a GPS somewhere. Now try to find your way back without that
Oh,
little
yeah.
box telling you to do it. That's a perfect example of how our
It's
brain
amazing.
relies on that, in a way that's going to get us in trouble. I remember my phone died and I didn't have a charger or anything, and I'm like, oh my gosh,
I don't
I'm
know where
lost, and that's exactly it, and that's it. But our brains like that. The thing about the box is what gets our brain going. Two words: endless scroll.
yeah.
Where you can just keep on forever. Whoever invented that, my
hmm
goodness, they definitely got the brains of kryptonite on that. GABA is something I didn't know about. You can buy it on Amazon. I'm going to put a link down to some GABA down below too. Um,
I guess I should have probably shared this on my page too, huh?
yeah, share it. We're still live, so you can. You
Yeah.
go to Bow Wow Bill page and then share it, and then
While you're putting links up, I'll share
yep.
this on my page.
Addressing poverty in humans, assisting in job training and placement, support for addiction remediation, still the most successful strategies against generative general general dude I can't even generational recidivism generational there we go, my brain, but I struggled through it and I got it, so we're good. Problem free life means you're dead. And just that sounds like a Baltimore comment. And here's another Baltimore comment: the only time there's zero stress is in death.
Yep.
Yep.
So might as well
Get up and move. That's what
yep.
Dave says.
Stress ourselves by our own on
Embrace
our
the
own rather than
suck.
just letting it happen.
Embrace the suck. That's what I tell people. Embrace it. And that David Goggins. Have you read that book?
What is it?
David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me. You got to read it. can't hurt me. This guy's a freaking nut. He's an animal. He runs like 100-mile races every weekend. I mean, this guy's, I mean, he's taken his body to the lowest, like broken it down. And he's like, I'm here to tell you guys that the brain and the body are tricking you. Like, you are capable of so much more than we think. And he's like, that's what I'm going to live my life to be, the baddest MFer to ever live. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Small, solvable, healthy bits of stress can be motivational and empowering, but it's so subjective on how much is too much. Absolutely. Based on experiences, based on neural pathways that have been established. I mean, PTSD, all that stuff. Talk about the overlaps between operant and classical. I mean, that's basically whose influences. So who can even read a paper map now, you know?
Read a what?
Paper map. Like Rand McNally.
Oh, yeah.
Rand McNally atlases, you know? I used to have to go buy one of those. Linda's like, I can still read a paper map.
I think the land nav I did is still in there that I hope I could still read.
Well, that's one of the highest measures of IQ is spatial navigation and being able to take a flat nat and be able to navigate in the real world with that too, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they say that London taxi drivers, you know, are some
yep.
of and then the phone number is remembered by heart. Yep, only ones that you can in the cell phone. I had to consciously remember my wife's cell phone. So stress equals growth. Absolutely. And I still have one. So, you know, we're going on an hour and 20 minutes. I know that we could probably keep going on, but, you know, tell me why did you name your dog Can Too?
I have, you know, when a lot of people see my dogs, they're like, I wish my dog could do that. And I always find myself saying, well, your dog can, you know, we just have to, you know, I mean, within limits, but, you know, like, I wish my dog would sit and stay, or I wish my dog could be so well behaved in public, or I wish my dog would do this or that. And
yeah.
I feel like I was always reassuring people that we could get them there and we could get your dog to do it. And I said, you know, I'm always telling people your dog can do it too. So it seemed like a good business name.
I like it.
Yeah.
I agree too.
I'm really bad at naming things. My dog's usually like, they're like 4 months old and people are like, what's its name? I'm like, Puppy.
Blitzen. So what's up with Blitzen? Are you a Christmas nut?
I got her around Christmas and it took me, I don't know, probably a month to name her. And all of my friends were just like coming up with silly names for her. So she would like bound around like a little deer. So I was like, oh, name her Blitzen because it's, you know, Christmas time and the other names that people were picking out were not no good. So.
And I get a PSA 3 too. Neuroscientist Dr. Caroline Leaf has a lot of fascinating work on building the brain. Drew, if you got a link to Amazon, one of her books or something, if you wouldn't mind posting that down below, I'd love to find out more information about
it. It's like a little book club right now.
Yeah, I love reading and not like that, but one book will spur me off onto 10 more books. You know.
And Kevin, yes, you can get a PSA 3. I believe in you and your dog.
I believe in you, Kevin. I do too. Now go do it. You're going to have some stress, but once you've done it, you know, the wishes come true with effort. That's absolutely right. Oh crap! Let me think. So I have to do some quick announcements because I'm suck at like self-promoting. I have to do. So I'm starting a Bow Wow Bill Patreon page. Bow Wow or patreon.com/Bow Wow Bill. Nothing's on there right now. So if you join it, but I've got a new the treadmill that I just ordered. I'm gonna let that be my first post, and then you know, so we're gonna do that, and so check that out. There we go. And then, can you wish with one hand and crap in the other? Nice. That's what my dad used to say. Wish in one hand and crap in the other, and see which one fills up first. Matt Wilson, Ariel is a rock star. So
thank you, Matt.
So if people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to do that? If they want to work with you, or
probably bug me repeatedly on Facebook, or well, I don't usually give out my number online, but
you can do email or anything, or just bug her on Facebook or bug me.
Yeah,
and I can get you in touch with her too.
Facebook messages, I see them. Sometimes I like read them when I'm driving and then forget to respond. But if you send me a few and say, hey, I'm really interested in
Stalker
getting
mode.
together. Yeah, pretty much.
Very good.
And Baltimore is not far. That's definitely doable to come up there and teach a seminar.
There we go. Well, and you're welcome over here too. If you ever want to teach a seminar,
Hmm.
I'd love to have you.
I love the West
Yeah,
Coast.
I'm just north of Seattle, about 45 miles, but I got a little ranch here and a few acres, and I'd love to just talk more about the studies that you've done, and this has been really fun, and time has flown by, and that's when I know I got to.
We didn't really talk about dogs much, but
Did we?
I thought
Did
it was
we or no?
interesting.
Well, we should.
Not really. I like talking about the brain, though.
Yeah, well, not it all correlates down. I mean, we're all biological creatures, and we can. I mean, I wouldn't mind having you back if you're interested
Oh,
sometime
yeah,
in
of
the
course.
future. We'll maybe get into dogs or maybe something else. Um,
I'm happy to talk about any kind of nerdy training,
yeah,
brain
I
stuff.
mean,
So,
it all boils down to the brain anyway. So, and neural
yeah.
pathways that we're trying to form in that dog's mind. We're trying to take and make it a dirt road and then form it into an 8-lane highway um, through repetition. And
Hmm.
so, is there anything else that you want to add, or?
No, I really appreciate you bringing me on and chatting with me.
Yeah, my pleasure. I appreciate you coming on. I'm trying to look at the comments. Everybody's howdy, y'all. Oh, Felix just saying howdy. We're just leaving Felix here. Thanks for your time, guys. Always appreciated. You're very welcome, Kevin. And go get that PSA3 and report back to us, both of us, when you do so. A fascinating talk. Thanks for joining us, Kim. And everybody, hit that share button. Get this shared out far and wide. And I think that's it. Great interview.
Okay.
Thank you. And so if you want to hold on for a second, I will say goodbye to you in the studio there. But we'll
Okay.
say goodbye to everybody right now.
Goodbye, everybody.
And if I drop you, then I'll call you right back on Messenger. Okay.
Okay. Sounds good.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining
Bye.
us.
Thank you.